Good morning, Internet. It is March 21st, 2019, and today we are going to use a case study to talk about what the school system truly teaches and how the school system transmits its own values, and whose values is that, over the values of parents. So I woke up this morning and I was reading along a thread in which a mother had posed a question because she was very concerned. And basically, what had happened is her young boy, her middle school child, was in school and he was sitting at the lunch table with his friends, and a school administrator overheard him saying to his friends that, ready for this, he would not date a Muslim girl. Now, the school administrator stepped in and reported this comment to the higher-ups at the school, and eventually this got to the principal's office, and apparently this happened yesterday. So the middle school boy, was called to the principal's office, and the principal told him that the principal had heard the boy said he wouldn't date a Muslim girl. So the boy said, yes, I did say that. I would not date a Muslim girl. Well, the principal threatened to suspend him if he said it again, and sent the boy home with a letter for his mother explaining what happened. And now his mother wants to know what to do, as the principal would like to speak with her and have her come down to the middle school. What would you do if you were a parent in this situation where your middle school student, talking to his friends in a cafeteria, said he would not date a Muslim girl, and the school proceeded to call him down to the principal's office, threatened to suspend him for saying he wouldn't date a Muslim girl? What would you do in this situation? It's very interesting how the school system operates. And what I really want to point out, more than the situation, is the lessons that are truly taught and how the school system becomes the primary vehicle in which values are passed to children rather than their parents. And this, more than anything else, is something that should be largely considered when you think, where should I send my child to school? Should I send my child to school? Should they go to public school? Should they go to a private school? Because more than knowledge itself, it is our values that we want to pass to our children. Now, let's think about this for a minute. What is truly taught in this situation? The child is taught that speaking your mind can get you in trouble, that authority is always watching, and what really hurts society is all of the children are taught that you are responsible for the feelings of other people. Now, if you go to any good psychologist, if someone is having problems with anxiety, depression, they go to a psychologist, the first thing a psychologist will tell them, and I'm not a psychologist, but they will tell them that you are responsible for your own feelings. But what is the school system teaching in this situation? That the young boy is responsible for the feelings of other people, and that he can get in trouble because other people's feelings have been hurt. Therefore, the other students aren't responsible for their own feelings. Now let's talk about this from a Christian perspective. Let's talk about this from a religious perspective. So a Christian boy is being threatened with suspension because he said he wouldn't date a Muslim. He said, oh my God, this is discrimination. Well, isn't all dating discrimination? Literally all dating is discrimination, right? If a boy or a man goes up to a woman and says, would you like to go out on a date? And she says, no, that's discrimination. So where does it stop? Do we now go to girls and say any girl that has turned a boy down on a date has discriminated against that boy? Do we now go and tell young girls that if they turn down a date with a boy who asks them, that they should be suspended from school? Well, probably not, because we're already telling young boys that if you ask this is hyperbole, but if you ask a girl out on a date, you should be suspended from school because you're a sexual predator, right? But no, really, all dating is, and thank you, Lockneck Monster. It's been hard to find you, but it turns out you showed up in my stream. But discrimination is the most natural part of dating, because otherwise everyone would date everyone else. This was actually, if you read A Brave New World, see, the book that gets a lot of publicity is 1984 by George Orwell, but Aldous Huxley, who was his family was very tied up in the eugenics movement, wrote the book A Brave New World, and in A Brave New World, it was essentially illegal for a girl or a boy, for anyone to turn down anyone when they asked them on a date, because it was said this is discrimination, this is wrong, how can you do that? So because of that, anyone who asked anyone on a date had to go on a date, and the culture had devolved to the point where anyone who wanted to have sex with anyone would have sex with anyone. The idea is to damage the relationship between men and women, to damage the natural bond that occurs between men and women so that families can be formed. So we wouldn't tell, at least I hope we wouldn't, tell girls or women that they had to date every guy that asked them on a date. But the school is saying that if a Christian boy says he wouldn't date a Muslim girl, well, that's just out of line, that we can't have that. Well, let me turn the tables around, because we're talking about discrimination. You're saying, oh my God. No, that's a good phrase, isn't it? Oh my God, you are discriminating against Muslims. Okay, what if a Muslim said that they wouldn't date a Christian girl? Well, based on in-group preferences, it is much more frowned upon in the Muslim community to date Christians than it is in the Christian community to date outside of their religion. So would the school district suspend a Muslim for saying they wouldn't date a Christian? Because if they wouldn't, this is clear discrimination against Christians. Now, I'd like to state, I have no problem with a Muslim stating they wouldn't date a Christian. See, religions are belief systems, and when you're teaching your child about dating, what you want to teach them more than anything else is that more important than physical characteristics, because the flesh can be very tempting. When you date someone, you want to make sure they have the same ethics and the same moral principles as you. That's what's removed from our society enough, right? We put on this rap music, right? And it's like, and everything's about big booty hoes, right? And you go on Instagram and there's guys just flexing, right? And there's girls posting half-naked pictures. And when young people think about dating, they think about, because this is what society teaches, because parents have been replaced as the primary passers of morals and ethics by the school system. So everything's become vanity. So when young people think about dating, it's always about, oh, what does this person look like? And don't get me wrong, that's important. I would certainly tell my child that when you date someone, you want to date someone that you find physically attractive, because that is an important part of intimacy, and that is an important part of dating. But what I would say is more important when you date someone, talk about why divorce rates are so high. I mean, there are many reasons, but this is part of the reason. People are dating based on physical characteristics. Oh, I like the way this person looks. They're so fly. They're so cool, right? I like the way they talk. I like the way they walk. I like the way people look at them. I like their car. I like their social status. But if you're advising your child and saying, what do you want in the end? You want a long-lasting, healthy relationship in which you have a partner in life. You have a partner that you can rely on. If you want that, the most important thing you look for when you date is similar moral values, a similar outlook on life. But now the school system is telling young Christian boys that they can't discriminate in their dating patterns. So girls can discriminate in their dating patterns, and rightfully so, right? If Harvey Weinstein, or a Harvey Weinstein lookalike in middle school without all his power, asks a girl out on a date and she says no, we don't tell that girl, oh, you've discriminated against this boy, and rightfully so. She did discriminate. Discrimination isn't always bad. Discrimination is okay. If a Muslim child says they wouldn't date a Christian, I strongly doubt the school would react in the same way. I strongly doubt the school would say you have to date a Christian. And the reason for that is because Muslims have a stronger in-group preference than Christians, and Muslims would throw a freaking fit, and rightfully so. Because if their values, right, I don't have the values of a Muslim person, but I actually don't discriminate in allowing people to have their own values. I just have my own. So a Muslim would be completely justified in being outraged if they told their child that I want you to date someone with a similar worldview to us. I want you to date someone who shares the same religious values and morals as us. And then a Muslim sends their child to school and the school says, no, they have to date a Christian. What? Put the shoe on the other foot. Another situation where this absolutely would not have happened. What if a Jewish person a young Jewish boy had said they wouldn't allow or a young Jewish child said, I wouldn't date a Christian, or I wouldn't date a Muslim. What a shock that a Jewish child wouldn't date a Muslim child. Would the school call that Jewish child in and say, you're being suspended? No, there would be absolute outrage. And the reason there would be outrage is because Jewish people, like Muslims, have strong in-group preferences. In fact, most Jewish families, I'm not speaking for all, but most Jewish families won't allow their child, their daughter, to marry someone that doesn't have a direct line of Jewish descent. And again, this isn't a bash on Jewish people. There's nothing wrong with that. My point is showing the contrast as to what happens when a Christian says in school that they wouldn't date someone versus what happens when a Muslim or a Jewish person says they wouldn't date someone. This is discrimination, and it's actually teaching Christians that their values aren't as valuable as people who have other values. Now that is discrimination if I've ever seen it, yet the school is telling this young Christian boy that he can't discriminate against who he dates, as the school, ironically, discriminates against him. These are the things that we have to think about as parents, because our values are being eroded. And Christians who generally have a much weaker in-group preference than other religions, whether that be the religion of Islam, whether that be the religion of Judaism, Christians are the ones who are discriminated against the most, because Christian parents will allow the school system to suspend their child for saying they wouldn't date someone who's not a Christian. But the school system would never do that to a Muslim. The school system would never do that to a Jewish person. And again, rightfully so. I'm not saying that Jewish people or Muslim people are bad for having in-group preferences. I'm saying they should be able to, because as a parent, the primary thing we should advise our children is that you want to date people with good moral character. Well, generally, people view others with good moral character as people who have similar morals to themselves. So, what would you do if this was your child? If your child was having a conversation in school and a teacher had overheard it, conversation with his friends, he said he wouldn't date a Muslim girl, and then he was called down to the principal's office and threatened with suspension. What would your reaction be? By the way, if we want to talk about lessons that your child is taught, think about it from this perspective. Do you think your child's being taught that surveillance is okay, that the surveillance state is okay, that it's all right, that Big Brother is watching everything your child does? Your child goes to school, they have to raise their hand to go to the bathroom. your child goes to school and if they say something that the authorities deem offensive, that the authorities say might hurt someone else's feelings, well, then they are being prosecuted for that or persecuted for that. What about their freedom of speech? I heard people argue in this thread, well, children in school don't have freedom of speech. That's been established by law. So the schooling system, which compels us to, even if you homeschool, you are compelled by law to some degree play ball with the government mandated schooling system and curriculum. So the government, who is supposed to protect our free speech, mandates us by law that we must teach our children certain things, and then in the school system mandates that we don't have free speech by law. So you're teaching people that they don't have free speech. You're indoctrinating them into the belief that I started with in the beginning, that other people's feelings are more important than your thoughts, right? Because essentially free speech is freedom to articulate our thoughts. What would you do if these were your children? By the way, if you can please follow my other YouTube channel on Classical Learner, eventually that will become my primary posting location. I'm going to post the link in the description notes right there, and also follow my Facebook page, Classical Learner. So when we send our children to school, they are not only getting a bad education, but your system of morals, your parental advice is being subverted to the point where children are being taught that they can't discriminate. Well, certain children are being taught that they can't discriminate within their dating practices. Guys, I appreciate you. I appreciate you tuning in this morning. Follow Classical Learner on YouTube. Follow my Facebook page, Classical Learner. And if you want to support me financially, www.patreon.com/FFRnews. As always, power to the individual and long live